Hello again. Thank you for joining me for another video. So today I was going to tell you a little bit about the last time I had a major initiation experience, is what I like to call it. It was in 2013 and my entire life fell apart. There was little left afterwards. It was like one of those tower moments where everything you've been working on goes up in smoke. There was nothing left. I had to start over, and I really didn't have a whole lot of pieces to pull from to start over. So I didn't have a very large, I really didn't have a social support network at all. I didn't have a family support network at all. I was really on my own, and I had lost everything I'd been working for. And so what I did during that time, was experiencing a pretty profound spiritual initiation is the word I like to use, because I think I was already awake. I was awake since I was little. I was never, confused about whether or not there was a supernatural world. I didn't understand how other people described it, but there was never a moment where I didn't feel the presence with me. And so during this time period in 2013, everything crumbled around me, and at the same time that all of these events were happening, relationships dissolving, lost my housing. I had one class away from getting a bachelor's degree, and I couldn't finish. There was a bunch of stuff that happened which literally made no sense. One of my classes didn't count, and then I had to pay for everything out of pocket to redo it. I couldn't get financial aid. It was just like a big, huge mess. It was like literally the whole path that I had been on, as if you were walking across a bridge, right? And the bridge just collapses underneath you, and there was nothing left. And I was a single mother, so I needed to figure stuff out. And so I kind of took it as a sign from the universe, because I had not dealt with the stuff from 10 years earlier where I'd had another initiation experience. And my first, they have them about every 10 years. So I just went through another one, but it was really like, this is kind of a little bit of it here. So mild. It's like, okay, I'll just start telling people about the spiritual stuff, and then maybe everything will not fall apart for me. So in 2013, everything had fallen apart for me. I decided I'm going to look deeper into the spiritual stuff. What happened was I kept on getting what felt like signs and synchronicities, things that were out of the normative life I had been on. So I was back into a spiritual sync, and so things where owls were showing up. Owls would come at me out of nowhere on a gravel road in the middle of the prairie. An owl would come flying out at me. That happened like 3 times, and 2 of them were in snowy owl, and it was really so intense. It was an intense experience. The one time they had come right, like they were going to try to come through the windshield of the car I was driving in. So like those kind of really intense experiences. I had some other weird interactions also that felt very significant to me, and that corresponded with other things that mattered to me in terms of, like, I would take it as a sign. It might not necessarily mean much to you, but for me there were definitely signs of, hey, pay attention, the spiritual world is trying to talk to you. And so not long after everything was falling apart, and I really had no idea whatsoever how to fix everything or get everything going again, I ended up in a small town, and it was just like one thing after another. And we got it in our head to buy a van and head out west. So I don't think the intention was necessarily head out west and stay out west. It was mostly head out west, get out of the environment we were in, and see if I could figure something else out. I had to get something else going. Everything had fallen apart. I know that Spirit was calling me and wanted something to happen. And so I thought that there would be some substance to like the van life experience, right? So I had a spiritual awakening. It felt like people were starting to wake up to things, and that caring about things that I had always cared about, and like the art seemed more inspiring. Music seemed to be speaking to me in a deeper, more meaningful way, and it just felt like time to grasp potential, right? And so we loaded up the van. So we did not do like van life, like totally rebuild the inside and make it beautiful with like the little sink or little kitchen area or anything like that. So we did have a bed area and we did have storage, but other than that, it was still basically a van and primarily just used for getting from place to place. And then at campgrounds or different things like that is where we would use plumbing. And I just absolutely did not like it whatsoever. I really enjoyed camping with the van and being able to go to all the places that we saw. There were so many cool places, especially in Oregon. There's just like tremendous beauty on the West Coast and a lot of really cool places to be and really cool people to meet. And so those parts of the journey were incredibly beautiful. I felt very healed. We spent a bunch of time at Mount Shasta, and just the magnitude of that place, how big the mountain actually is and the energy it gives off, was incredibly healing for me. And I feel like it really helped flip me all the way into more like spirit mode. But I did not enjoy, so this was 10 years ago and people weren't quite as on board with the cultural shifts yet. So you would still get chased out of towns. Like the second we showed up in a town, we would be followed. And I am such a sensitive soul. I really don't like feeling like I'm doing something wrong. So anytime that I am like under the impression I'm hurting another person in some way or breaking a rule or any of those kinds of things, I try to self-correct as quickly as possible. But it just felt like I was judged on the surface and had to just keep on moving because there was no place where it was acceptable. And so I went from this idea of like, oh, I'm waking up, this, the spiritual world is real, and it really feels like people are starting to catch on, because that's a little bit of the echo chamber that happens online, is like you can find what you're looking for, but that is not necessarily what you actually see in the real world. And I was pretty naive to the difference of that at the time until we headed out for van life. And then I was like, oh, people are not ready for this. Actually, they are still living the exact same life that I was trying to escape. No matter where I go, it's still there. So I think it's a little better now, 10 years later. But at the time, I just felt harassed every time. If we stopped anywhere that was not like an actual camping spot or state park that we were literally paying for, or like a BLM place, you could go to BLM land. But even on BLM land, if you were there for more than 3 days, you could expect a ranger to come through and check on you and make sure you were not intending to live there. It was really a bit of a disillusionment, right? For me, I guess that's the best word for it. And it took a while to recover from what I experienced, because I had gone from being like just so overwhelmed with happiness that it felt like people were ready to kind of shift out of the oppressive kind of 9-to-5 mentality and like make a little more room for the adventure and the artist spirit. But I was a little bit ahead of the curve and people weren't quite ready for it. And it hurt a little bit to feel the levels of rejection that came from it. And you know what? For real, indoor plumbing is where it's at. Like, I never want to be without it ever again. I really, really like it. It's the best thing ever. So it's one of those lessons you learn along the way in this spiritual journey, is like, what exactly does it mean to be awake, and how can the world revolve or change? How do we integrate our new way of perspective and being in the world with a world that stays almost the same? it's an interesting thing to navigate, and I'm still getting my feet under me around it. But I just wanted to share that in case others have had a similar experience where they were awake and it really felt like people were on board and they were ready to go. Like, I know eco villages showed up everywhere, and the like idea of communal living in concept is really way. It's a great idea, but actually the amount of work and effort and money that goes into making it feasible and possible is a different story. And I think we're still trying to figure out how to navigate a higher mind way of dealing and operating with each other with some fairness and compassion and room. So, well, that's my story for today. I hope you are doing well. Please feel free to leave a comment below, and I will talk to you again next time. Take care.